Hello and welcome to Ray of Light, a new podcast all about reading, writing and happiness with myself, Eleanor Ray, the author of uplifting book club fiction. This episode, I'm delighted to welcome Clare Leslie Hall. Clare's most recent book is the gorgeous, heartbreaking sensation, Broken Country, which has been a New York Times and Sunday Times bestseller. It's been a Reese's Book Club pick, and Fern Cotton chose it for her book club too. Plus, it's been optioned for film by a major production company. Even more importantly, perhaps, it's been recommended by my 90-year-old Aunt Norma living in Indiana. So, Clare, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, wow. Thanks so much for having me. And Aunt Norma, I love you. That's so nice to hear.
Now, it's not only my Aunt Norma who's loved Broken Country, it's really connected with readers around the world. And I'd love to know a little bit more about the book and what inspired you to write it.
Yeah, so Broken Country is basically a story of a very passionate love triangle that ends with a murder trial at the Old Bailey. And it's a story of Beth, who's a young woman who is completely torn between two very different men and two very different lifestyles. And it's about what happens when her first love comes back into the village and turns her life upside down. And the story came to me in a real kind of thunderbolt moment. My husband was out running in the fields behind our house during lambing season with our son's puppy. And the farmer, he ran into fields of lambs and the farmer threatened to shoot him, which did not happen. But what did happen was that my husband, John, came back and we started talking about this horrible moment. And suddenly within talking, 15 minutes chatting about it, this very vivid scene came into my head. And it was a farmer and his wife in the field of sheep and a little boy running towards them. And I knew instantly that the little boy reminded them of the son that they'd lost, which is a very big part of the story. And I also thought there's going to be a very strong chemistry between the boy's father and the farmer's wife. So it was literally like this love story dropped out of the sky. And that the book took a lot of rewriting, but that initial scene, that inciting instant, was there from start to finish over 4 years of writing it.
I love that. And I love it when things come in a flash of light like that. It doesn't always happen. But when it does, it feels amazing. And it's a long, hard road to get to a wonderful finished book from there. But starting like that is a gift. Now, Broken Country has been a massive hit, but you've mentioned you've been writing for a long time. Can you tell me a little bit more about your writing journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so long, so winding. Only ever can remember wanting to be a novelist. And I grew up in a family of readers, but I sort of assumed you couldn't be a novelist straight away. So after university, where I read English, I became a journalist and I worked on newspapers, lots of different kinds of jobs. A lot of the time I was working in finance, which if, for anyone who knows me, was a crazy, crazy area for me to be in. But when I was about 30, I thought, right, it's now or never. And I started writing fiction. I had a very young family. You know what that's like. So time was very poor. And I just remember, feeling quite a lot of despair around that time because John would really kindly take the children off to stay with his mum so that I could write. It would be bliss. I'd get those weekends, was really how I got the book written. And then he'd send me photographs of the kids and they'd be playing in a stream or dangling upside down on a rope swing. And I'd think, what are you doing? You should be with your kids. And I distinctly remember being awake in the middle of the night and just thinking, should you stop? This is becoming so painful. And then I just asked myself, could you stop? And I really thought about it and I thought, no, I couldn't. Writing is who I am. It's what I've always done. And what I realized was that the whole thing about being published had become almost like a stick to beat myself with, and that I'd lost the joy of writing. And I don't know why, but something really relaxed in me at that point. I thought, you're going to write whether you get published or not. It doesn't actually matter. And it helped so much. And actually, I think I probably, maybe my writing relaxed as well because I got a book deal quite quickly after that.
Amazing. And I think it's really important if you're writing a book and you're not yet published, it doesn't mean you're not a writer. You're still a writer.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that, I was in this writers group and we used to say how we felt embarrassed if people asked us about our books because we hadn't been published. And, the validation is all about being published. But actually, that's not true.
Yes, I agree. And there are more routes to publication now as well. So I spoke to T. Kinsey in another episode who started off self-publishing and has now sold 2.25 million books.
Amazing.
And if you write a wonderful book, whether or not a traditional publisher accepts it, you've still written a wonderful book. So I think that's
100%.
really important. Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, you've mentioned your earlier books before Broken Country, because Broken Country, massive hit, but you'd written 2 books before that. Is that right? 2 published books. Can you tell me a little bit more about them? Because I understand they're going to be re-released now.
Yes. So they were called Him and Mine, and then they've been republished in the UK and the US, excitingly. They're now called Pictures of Him and Days You Are Mine. It was interesting actually because when the US bought the books, the backlist, I had to go back and do a little light edit on them. And Days You Are Mine, my second novel, I never liked the ending. So I got to change the ending, which was really
Oh, wow.
amazing. So whoever gets to do that. So it's way more redemptive. And I did do like little light edit just to make sure everything was still okay. And, some things I felt just could have done with a little bit more nuance. And the first novel is about a woman who's mute and she's got selective mutism. She's in a hospital, a psychiatric hospital. You know that she's witnessed something very, very traumatic and that she's lost the power of speech and she's being visited by her husband and her children. And then it flashes back to this very passionate love affair from her past. It's funny because I think all my books are the same. They're really cross genre. But with that first novel, which was Him originally, I remember my agent at the time saying to me it was one of the hardest books she'd ever had to position. And it's because it's kind of suspenseful, very dark. It's a love story. So it's a cross genre book. And then my second novel, Days You Are Mine, is the same and that was actually inspired by something personal. So it's the story of a young man who has a baby and it inspires him to find his birth mother. And that was actually something my husband did. He found his birth mother. Yeah. And so that's all it is, but it's very much inspired by where we were at that time in life and him finding his birth mother.
You talk about writing cross genre. I'd say it sounds like both of those books, if you loved Broken Country, you'd enjoy your previous books as well. It sounds like there's certain elements which are always there. There's the passion and there's some element of crime. Is that true?
I would say absolutely. I would say the first 2 books are probably very similar to Broken Country. They always start from a place of emotion. And then I hope they're quite suspenseful as well.
Yes, I actually love books which are cross genre like that because I think there's wonderful elements from the thriller and the mystery. But when I read thrillers and mysteries, I want the passion and the love and that kind of deeper meaning to them as well. And that's what I try to do with Everything is Beautiful. I actually have a past writing cozy crimes under a different name, which I'll talk about one day. But when I sat down to write something a little bit different, a little bit more character based, I really wanted that page turning kind of mystery running through my books as well. Do you want to have something where you really want to find out what's happened? So Everything is Beautiful is about a hoarder who uncovers the secrets to her past underneath some towers of her belongings. And then it's a healing journey of trying to find out what actually happened and I think that element of mystery, I love it in books. I love writing it and I love it when I read it as well. It really keeps me focused on the page and stops my attention wandering at all.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, some of my favorite books like The Secret History or The Great Gatsby, they are books that have love in them and crime in them. And I just love that, and mystery. And I love that combination.
Now, we've talked about authors, you're a writer, whether you have success or not, but you have had loads of success. Having a breakout hit midway through your career is a writer's dream. It's certainly my dream. And I would love to live vicariously through you for a minute. When did you realize that Broken Country was going to be something special?
Okay, great question. Well, I talk about this with my husband all the time. I'm like, he says, "Have you processed yet?" And I'm like, "No, not yet." So I don't know if I'll ever process the amazing things that have happened in the last year. But I would say I wrote the book in a vacuum. I was out of contract. It was actually quite heartbreaking, Broken Country for me, because in the middle of writing the book, I had an agent who I really loved and I'd had for 5 years. I think the problem was that I was sort of trying too hard to write my way out of crime fiction. But anyway, she called me in and said, "Claire, it's not landing. You need to put this book away and write something else." And I did do that because I didn't want to lose her. And after about 8 months, I was just so low without the book. And I went back to it and I changed agent. And it felt like a very heartbreaking and difficult decision doing that. And I was worried it was going to be career sabotage because this was this wonderful agent I'd had and everybody respected. But anyway, I went with my gut and I went with a new agent who's been amazing. But still, I only knew that she loved the book. And then I knew that her foreign rights agent loved the book. But that was it. And then it went on submission and quite quickly it started selling. I think it went to 22 countries within a couple of weeks, and I think it's now in 35. So I guess around that time, which happened to be London Book Fair, around that time I had a feeling. But you still don't know whether it's going to connect with readers. But what was amazing about that time, because it had been this quite hard book, was getting letters from international editors who were saying they were crying on the train or in Paris or whatever. And it was just, oh my God, and they wrote such lovely letters. It was the most amazing thing. And now the most amazing thing is getting emails from readers. And it's just, It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's been a theme in the earlier podcast episodes as well, how wonderful it is when readers reach out to tell you that they've enjoyed your book. Like there's no better feeling than getting an email from someone or a message on Instagram or anything saying that something about your book really touched them and really connected with them. It's just the best feeling you can have as an author, I think.
You know, people tell you incredible things and it feels like a real privilege to hear them.
It's definitely. So readers have been loving it. Reese Witherspoon, a particular reader who rather liked it. She's obviously hugely influential in the book world. And I saw some pictures of Instagram of you and her hanging out at your launch party. How was that? Tell me everything.
Oh, gosh, Eleanor, it was so amazing. I mean, she's been incredible support and her book club is just so amazing. It really champions female authors. So obviously the first thing was just to be picked was, I remember my editor saying, you know, you won't believe it, but guess what? You're the March pick. And I was absolutely so thrilled by that. They told me that Reese was going to do an interview with me on my launch day at Apple Books. And that was just incredible and surreal. But she is so lovely. I mean, she's just, I think with Reese, you know, the thing is, everything you think she's going to be from looking at her social media is what she actually is. She's just very caring. She's incredibly intelligent, but she makes everything very easy. She's a professional, of course. So she made that interview so easy for me. And she's just so warm. So it was a really joyous experience, I have to say. I felt incredibly lucky to have had it.
Fantastic. Now, we've talked about the book's success and I've lived vicariously through it. So thank you very much. You mentioned how painful and difficult it was writing it and the process. How did you get through that? You had to change agents, you had to stop it, you had to start it again. What got you through that?
Yeah, I mean, it was so hard. I think it was also lockdown was when I started. The first 2.5
lockdown
years,
was a terrible time for writing.
It was a terrible
worst.
time. I think what happened was, I was probably trying to write myself out of crime fiction. So there were a lot of poems in those first drafts, which I don't know. I remember saying to a girlfriend, "What would you do if you read a novel that had lots of poems?" And she went, "I'd skip the poems." And I'm like,
Me
"Okay,
too.
yes, I get it." Me too. So only one poem survived, the poem at the end, and so I think I did a lot of research, and I think I probably went down some rabbit holes, and basically I think my agent really liked it, the writing, but then she said it's not landing. And I think she was right. It just broke my heart because those characters were, I was just so fond of, them. I loved them so much. And actually, I spent 8 months writing a new novel, which I'm going back to in the setting anyway. But I was just trying and failing to fall in love with it like I loved Broken Country. And I remember going to the cinema and driving back with a girlfriend who knows me really well. And I think sometimes you need your friends to show you what's in front of your nose. And she said, "Claire, I don't know why you did this. You loved those characters. Why have you done it?" And I just went home and I started thinking about Broken Country again. And I have said to my previous agent, "Thank you," because I realize now that 8 month break, suddenly thought how to do it. I know it's a woman's story. I know it's because it had had male voices before. I know it's a period novel, so it's going to be in the 50s and the 60s. And the bigger thing, I think I want to write a murder trial. And so, in a way, that book, some of the scenes came across, but a lot of it really, really changed. And I think it was the gap that enabled me to do it. But the leaving my previous agent, who I really got on so well with and respected, was very painful. And in a way, particularly having had this 20-year journey trying to get published. So I felt like I was almost, am I setting fire to my career here? And all I had was 10,000 words of the new draft. And I went to 5 agents with this 10,000 word submission, all agents that friends had recommended. And the first one who came back was Hattie, who's my agent. And honestly, it was one of the most exciting phone calls of my career because she just got it, and she just got who I was and what my writing was, because and she just I said, "Look, I want to include a murder trial, but I don't want to be positioned as a crime author." And she said, "You don't write crime fiction, you write book group fiction." It's like that was the first time I'd heard that. And then I said, got this passionate love triangle at the heart of it. I think maybe a comparative title could be The Paper Palace, which is one of my favorite books. And
I
she
love
said,
that book.
she said, "I'm thinking The Crawdads." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Okay, then. So she just really got it, and she put her head into the book. And even though it felt like it took quite a long time to get over the change, because I just felt, I don't know, it's like a breakup. I felt very devastated by it. But I also knew I had to be brave. I had to push myself to do something I didn't want to do. And my goodness, it changed my life. So I'm glad I did.
So, and I love your attitude isn't one of bitterness or anger towards the other agent. It's like, no, it wasn't working. And I think that's true with edits. Often if something isn't working, people can tell you what to do with it, but only you can really solve the problem. But if there's something that isn't working, you need to work out what it is and kind of rewrite it until it works. And it can go through many, many stages. And it's so interesting that it was from more of a male point of view before.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
how
yeah.
was it? I can't imagine
Um,
that because it's so much about kind of female empowerment and her being the main agent.
yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Well, so Frank and Gabriel, the love triangle, the men both had voices. And
Interesting.
in a way, I'm glad, because I think I knew those characters by the time I
Mm,
finally knew the way to do it. I knew them very, very well. And
yes.
Frank, Team Frank or Team Gabriel, as some people have said, Frank was the guy that I went back for. Frank broke my heart, and it was Frank more than Beth that I really couldn't give up on. It's funny, isn't it? And there's a particular scene in the book when he's sort of sets fire to this tree, and I just couldn't give up on that scene. I couldn't give up on him, and the way I wrote Frank in those early drafts was very earthy. It was quite experimental, but I think it really made me know exactly who he was, and the same with Gabriel too.
I think that's true. It's like research. You do loads of research for a book, and people always say it's like an iceberg, isn't it? You have the tip of the iceberg is all that shows, but there's all of this underneath it. But for you, it sounds like it was more about getting to really know the characters and understand them. And I think sometimes as a creative writing exercise, it's worth writing from someone else's point of view, one of the other characters in the story. To really get to know them and get to know what they're thinking so that all the characters can feel like people who do have their own voice, even if they don't have it on the page of the final novel.
Yes, I definitely think so. I think that's good advice, actually. I might take it for this tricky next book is to write from another perspective. I think you're right, because I'm not somebody, I don't know if you are, but I find too much detail closes me down. So I would never fill out a character chart, green eyes and where they
No, I
went to
can't
school.
do that.
I can't do all that stuff. But I think to write their voice is a very good idea. I'm going to do it.
Yes. That idea is from Philippa Pride, who's my writing mentor. She's Stephen King's UK editor, and she is absolutely brilliant. And she gave me things like that when I was just starting out, and I still use them all the time now, and I still meet up with her regularly. So I just wanted to give her a credit for that. Philippa Pride.
Great tip, Philippa. I'm going to do
Great.
this. I'm going to do it.
Now, your book, it's a love story. It's very passionate. Oh my goodness, I loved it. I devoured it. But it is about something very, very sad at its core. It's about child loss. I have 3 children. You have 3 children. Was it something that you found difficult to write?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I instinctively shy away from dramas where children die. I shy away
Same.
from books where children die. It's just something I couldn't ever bear to read about. And I never thought I would ever write a book about a child that died. However, what happened was Beth just came into my head that day when after my husband had been out running with the dog, and I just knew exactly who she was. And again, that's quite rare. I knew who Beth was. And the reason I knew who she was because I knew that every single decision she made was driven by the loss of her son and the missing of her son. And a lot of Beth is that she's attracted to this first love that went wrong. But a lot of it also, I think, is which is something I wanted to explore. It's just nostalgia and the power of that and how it can be really quite menacing. And so a lot of that is her looking back and wanting to be who she was before her life went wrong. And I just understood her. And so I had to write her. But it was very painful. And there are certain scenes in the book which you'll know what they are, that when I'm reading and I get towards it, I'm like, oh, my heart just sinks. So I did find it very, very difficult.
Having those moments of kind of utter sadness bring out the moments of joy as well. You have to feel the pain to get to the other side. And it makes the story much more powerful. And you're right, it couldn't have been any other way. So moving away from sadness, because we're a podcast all about happiness here, which part of the writing process brings you the most joy?
Well, there are a couple of things that I really love. I love it when I'm 3 or 4 drafts in and the characters just become literally like invisible friends. I work in a really tiny office, which used to be my son's cot room. And so it's like my writing cave. And I just love it when I just get inside and I guess it's like a safe space in a way. It's me and them. And I literally do feel we're back together again when I open up my draft. And so that's my favorite. But that does take quite a lot of drafts that weren't that great to get to that stage. But I adore it. And I don't mind being edited. I love the editing process. I mean, yes, sometimes you'll get a structural edit and I'll think, at the beginning. But I just love it once I know the characters well enough to enjoy it. That's the bit of the writing I like most. And the other thing I really love is, when you get those things that just come to you, those, like, I'll give you an example, was when I think 3 years into writing Broken Country, I was walking the dog and suddenly this twist, which is quite a big twist in the story, just came into my head. And I just thought, of course, it makes sense of the whole story. And it's just so, I guess it's so exciting when that happens. So when you've been struggling with something and suddenly it comes to you, those light bulb moments, That's my favorite thing.
Those gifts that just appear when you've been thinking and pulling your hair out over something, and then all of a sudden you're like, of course, this is what should happen. And then you write it and it happens and it's amazing. I had one for Everything is Beautiful. It's about Hoarder who uncovers clues to her past. And suddenly I was like, why is she collecting all of these things? And so I did it in front and backstory. So I had some backstory that showed her being with the people she loved who subsequently disappeared. That's the mystery of the novel, uncovering what happened to them. But I had scenes where she would be kind of with some glasses and her boyfriend or her best friend, and they'd be sharing something together that really meant something to her. And then in the front story, she'd be surrounded by towers and towers and towers of glasses, always threatening to fall down on her. But you know why those objects meant so much to her. And that really changed the book for me, I think, when I put that in. It just made it all make sense.
I love that. It's just so satisfying, isn't it, when it happens?
Really, really is. So, away from our books for a moment, can you tell me about another book that you've read that you absolutely love? Maybe one that isn't a bestseller or not a bestseller yet, that you wish more people would discover.
It's The Tomorrow Project by H. Critchlow. And this book had everything I love. From the very first page, I could not put it down. It's so gripping, but the prose is absolutely beautiful. And it's just got so much heart. And also the world building. I mean, she has created this world 25 years hence, which is so believable. So it's an absolutely fantastic novel.
I've read The Tomorrow Project and I loved it as well. It's this amazing world and this kind of everything ending, but then there's new beginnings and there's hope. There's hope at its core as well, which I love. And Heather's actually going to come on the podcast as well. So we've got that to look forward to. We'll find out more about it. Now, do you have any tips for aspiring authors? Is there anything that you would say to someone who thinks, right, I've got a novel in me, and I want to get it out? What would you say?
When I moved to Dorset, by which time I'd had a few knocks and been trying to get published for 10 years, I met two women and we really connected. And I discovered that they'd done a writing course. And I said, hey, shall we start a writers group? So we did. And I just had a baby. So they used to come to my house and during my baby's nap time once a week, and we would read out a piece of writing, which is how my first novel got written, really. And the thing was, firstly, it raised the bar because the first time their prose was so beautiful. I was like, right, I'm going to have to try a lot harder for next week. So there was that. But also, it was just these friendships that we formed it felt like I'd been so alone with writing. And suddenly I had these two amazing friends to walk through the whole journey with. And we shared everything, the highs and the lows, the rejections. And it was the best feeling. And what it really did was, I think it can be quite hard. And there are moments of real despondency with writing that go along with the high moments. But what finding these two friends did was just gave me the joy back in writing.
I think that's brilliant advice. Thank you. Aside from writing, where else do you find happiness in life? You've mentioned walking your dog a few times. What else do you enjoy?
Oh, gosh, what do I enjoy? Well, I mean, walking the dog is quite a big thing because I have learned since research with farmers that I now try and walk the dog without my phone. That's my daily dose of, joy. I'm just going to say, because my children are grown up now, the youngest is 17. Just if being with them is my favorite thing in the world because they're so funny and I just love spending time with them. And something else that I do, it's almost become sort of ritualistic for me, is when I finish a draft, which is not going to be for a while, I treat myself always to the cinema in the middle of the day, and it feels so decadent.
Lovely.
I go to the Everyman, and I have
very nice.
I have something delicious to eat, ice cream, all these things, and it's just me, usually just me in the cinema, and I love it. So that's my kind of treat.
I used to do. There's a cinema near me in Everyman actually that had mum and baby screenings. When my kids were like tiny little babies, I'd go in the middle of the day with all these other mums, and there'd be a pile of prams, and you just have a baby sleeping on you, hopefully,
Oh,
and they bring you a coffee and a piece of cake, and you just watch a film, and it takes you away from all the dirty nappies and all the struggles. And if your baby cries, no one minds; they're just pleased their one's asleep. It's just so lovely. So
oh,
great
I wish they had
advice.
that in my day. That sounds heaven.
It is lovely. You mentioned you're not going to have a first draft finished for a while. What have you got coming up next?
Well, it's quite early to talk about it because I think it's likely to change, knowing me and my process. But I'm working on. I did go back to the book that I was writing in between Agents and in the middle of Broken Country. I always loved the setting, and the setting is a crumbling clifftop hotel on the Jurassic Coast, and it's this very eccentric family who run it, and the father's a retired actor, and it's not cultish, but it's a very, very popular hotel. And basically it's a love story. So that's all I can really tell you, because I am fighting my way through my first draft. But I went off all guns blazing, and I absolutely adore the characters and the setting. But then it's just that tricky thing of not really knowing all the mystery threads and not really knowing the whole story. And you just have to write the book to find it out, don't you? How do you do it?
I always know how I want the book to end. I have a final scene that's as vivid to me as anything. And then I have to work the story backwards to see how do they get to that end point. So that's
Do you
generally
write
how
the
I do it.
ending? Do you write the
No,
ending?
no, I force myself to do it the right way round, I suppose. So I will write 2 pages of a plan, working towards that end scene, and then from there I'll flesh out the whole book. And sometimes it will flow beautifully, and my plan is a kind of a blueprint for my novel, and other times it will diverge completely, but I always get to that same endpoint I had in mind at the very beginning.
And do you follow beats or anything like that, or like Save the Cat or any of
Save the
those
Cat. I
things?
love Save the Cat.
Yeah. I think it
Yeah.
helps you have a sticky moment, doesn't it?
Yes, I try not to follow it too closely, because then you kind of I get, oh no, I haven't got my midpoint exactly in the middle, and where am I going to do that? And oh, the dark night of
Yeah.
the soul isn't dark enough. Generally, I'll have a sense of that as I'm putting my 2 pages together, and then I'll try and ignore it. And then maybe when I come back to edit, if I think, oh, this is a bit slow, it's like, oh, is it because there's a beat missing? Could I do something with that and bring it back in that way? What's your method? What do you use?
I basically do similar to you. I usually know my ending and my beginning, and sometimes my midpoint. And then I write an outline. And then I can tell you, because I'm going through it right now, I sort of set off, and it's all wonderful. And I keep thinking, gosh, will I hit the road bumps at 30,000 words? And yes, I always do. And at that point, I get out, Save the Cat, and I plot. I often read this article, an essay that Zadie Smith gave once. I'd like to say, anyway, it was about writing, and it was about writing on beauty. And I find it really comforting, because she says that she spent the first 2 years of writing on beauty, which is one of my favorite books. I love that book. She spent the first 2 years on the first 30 pages. And she says when she looks at the book, it's like being incarcerated in a cell, because she can remember what it was like, because she was just trying to get it right tonally and find the right form. And she was putting it into one tense and one point of view in another. And then the rest of it took 5 months. So I usually read that article just to tell myself it's all okay. Zadie Smith was stuck on her 20 pages for the first 2 years.
It's reassuring. I love it when I hate to say this, but I love it when other people struggle too.
Yeah, me too.
This makes me feel much better. Right. So thank you, Clare. This has been so brilliant. Clare's novel, Broken Country, is out now. So if you've enjoyed Ray of Light, please do like and subscribe for more. You can find me at Eleanor Ray Books across Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. So please do reach out to me there to let me know your thoughts. And if you've liked what you've heard, it might be that you like what I write too. It's uplifting book club fiction, and my newest book is called See the Stars, about a woman who finds solace in the skies when her life doesn't go to plan. See you next time for more tips on writing, reading, and happiness.